A little off night. The better man won tonight. Not here to make any excuses. Definitely did his thing. Just my time was off, and I couldn't capitalize on a couple of things, and his time was a lot better than mine tonight.
Okay, this is going to be my post-fight commentary. Um, I'm going to hit some bullet points real quick, and then I'm going to get out of your way. First off, you heard him say that his timing was off, and later on in the interview, he says, "I'm not making any excuses." And one of the things I've always uh, noticed that anytime a fighter says, "I'm not going to make any excuses," there's usually an excuse getting ready to come right behind it. His timing wasn't off for no reason. His timing was off because Crawford jab, his own right jab, and his counter punching threw Spence's timing off. That's really what happened. It's not like he was just having an off night. He's taking the credit away from Crawford. Crawford is the one that destroyed his timing because Crawford's timing was superior to his, period. That's number one. Number two, a lot of people that picked Spence to win the fight, the reason why they picked him in the first place was because of his style and his volume of punching. But his fighting, as I told a lot of different people, I said he's an attrition fighter. And that's how he wins his fights. And there are a lot of great attrition fighters. In my opinion, probably the greatest attrition fighter in the smaller weight classes, not the heavyweights like George Foreman or Joe Frazier, but in the lighter weight divisions, to me, the greatest attrition fighter of all time that I'd ever seen was Aaron the Hawk Pryor. If you've never seen him, you need to go on YouTube and look up some of his fights. And what made him so effective wasn't just his speed and the fact that he was an attrition fighter, but it was his toughness, his mental toughness and his physical toughness. He could get knocked down and he'd get right back up and get right back in your chest. And he would keep people backing up against the ropes in the corner for practically the entire fight. And he would chase him around and he would hunt him down. Spence's approach, he's also an attrition fighter, but he's much more controlled. He has much greater defense. But he's still, at the end of the day, he's an attrition fighter that comes forward. All that worked into it worked toward his demise, basically. Because what it did is allowed Crawford to set traps for him and catch him with counter punches that normally he probably wouldn't have got caught with. But because he is an attrition fighter and he does not know how to fight backing up, then he had nowhere to go. There was nothing he could do. And you could see that. I could see that early in the fight when he went down the first time in the second round, even though that was a flash knockdown. The fact that it happened to him at all was because he was pressing the fight. He was trying to go in on Crawford. Every time he got hurt bad, he was going in on Crawford. He's an attrition fighter. That's how he fights. That's his style. And I told people before the fight, I said, if Crawford stands in front of Spence, it's going to be a long night for Crawford. And it would have been. But Crawford didn't do that. Crawford moved. Crawford showed defense I've never seen him use before. Usually he does get hit with a lot of punches. He got hit with a few, of course, because you ain't going to be in a boxing match with the top guy in the division and not get hit. That wouldn't even make sense to even suggest that it would be otherwise. But he was able to handle those shots, and he didn't get hit with a bunch of them as evidence of the fact that you could look at his face and you could look at Spence's face. Because before the fight, I really had predicted, that was about the only prediction I had, was that Spence's face was going to look like Earl's. I mean, that Crawford's face was going to look like Earl Spence's face by the end of the fight, because I saw Spence being able to really land that right jab a lot more than what he did. And I figured he was going to be the one who was going to bust Crawford's face up, because it usually takes Crawford a few rounds to get started. But evidently, he anticipated all that, and he got started real quick. He was really getting started even in round one. I was starting to see him catch Spence with counter punches in round one. He just didn't catch him with anything that hard. But when he was downloading his information, when he was downloading that into that computer in round one, he was already starting to catch Spence coming in. So Crawford, he's a beast. I mean, you can't take nothing away from him. I did pick him to win the fight. I didn't pick it by any round or any stoppage, because I really thought, and what I thought was correct, that Spence would continue to keep getting up, so there wouldn't be a stoppage. And had it not been for the referee stopping it, which he should have, because he was that hurt and was taking a lot of punishment. But I knew Spence would keep getting back up, just like I knew if Crawford had went down, he would have kept getting back up, because it was that kind of fight, and they are that kind of fighter. So I wasn't surprised about that at all. And then third, a lot of people, I think, really gave Spence way too much credit. I never saw Spence as being this monster that everybody thought that he was. I never saw that. Just like I didn't see Ryan Garcia as being the monster that they said he was before he fought Tank. You know, I saw them as good fighters, but there's a difference between good and great. I saw them as being good fighters with good speed and good power, and even a good chin. But that doesn't always equate into a great fighter. A great fighter is capable of doing things that most fighters can't. I never saw that in Spence. I never saw that in Garcia. I never saw it. And I thought that it was more hype than anything, and it turned out to be just that. It was more hype than anything. I don't care about Spence's resume, because when you look at it, even if you look at the resume, the people that they both fought, the only one that, well, let me see. They both fought Kell Brook, and they both fought Porter. The only two people on Spence's resume that Crawford didn't fight was Mikey Garcia and David Garcia, as far as big names. And neither one of them equated to a Terrence Crawford. You know, they're good, but they weren't Crawford. And they both basically succumbed to his pressure. They had no answers for Spence's pressure. And that's not the mark of a great fighter. A great fighter can deal with anything that comes at him. And so, again, Spence is an attrition fighter. One of the biggest and greatest attrition fighters in the world, of course, was Big George Foreman. And when he fought Ali, Ali knew that. And that's why Ali did the rope-a-dope. Because he knew if he had tried to go toe-to-toe with George Foreman like he did other people, by George Foreman having the reach, just like Terrence Crawford had reach, he had him by 2 inches of reach. Anytime a boxer is facing someone that has the same or a little bit greater reach, it's hard for them to stay away from their punches, because they're going to get hit every time they go to punch, because the reach is basically the same, unless they can do it from a distance or from an angle. Ali was really good at cutting angles, but I think even he knew that after so many rounds, Big George was good at catching up with people. And so he laid on the ropes and sapped George's energy until he could take him out, because he knew George don't know how to back up. He's an attrition fighter. Well, the same thing happened with Spence. Spence is an attrition fighter. He only knows how to fight really one way. All the fights I've ever seen him in, That's the only way I know that he knows how to win. I'm not going to say that he's not capable of backing up and fighting a different style, but when it comes to winning the fight, I've never seen him win other than by attrition of just wearing his opponent down and them not being able to deal with his volume of punches. Crawford took all that away from him, and he was able to capitalize on it by basically setting traps and counterpunching him as he was backing out of exchanges. He would catch him on the way out with tail end punches. It was beautiful. It was a masterclass of boxing. Absolute masterclass.